This month, thousands of people in Arkansas will be the first to be thrown off of Medicaid because of new work requirements. Arkansas will remove more than 4,000 people from the Medicaid rolls, with some estimates saying that number could climb to 50,000 when the requirements are fully implemented inside of 1 year from now. We've got some stats on how this came about. Of those who lost coverage this month, about 95% didn't file the necessary documents with the state. That led to their removal from Medicaid, though some may have been working the required 80 hours a month. So if you didn't get in the documents, it doesn't matter if you were actually abiding by the requirements, you are off, and good luck getting back on. And we've got an associate director of the Kaiser Family Foundation's program for Medicaid talking about how this could have come about. It seems that the state is doing some outreach, but a lot of individuals still don't know about the new requirements and are not setting up their accounts. So even if you need the Medicaid, and even if you're doing the work, and even if you would fill out the paperwork, does the government have much of an incentive really to let you know about that if the driving ideology of Arkansas's government is to attempt to destroy Medicaid, certainly inside of their borders and hopefully be a part of that nationwide? Perhaps not. So maybe if you had responsible government actually trying to get the word out that people have to put in this paperwork to continue to qualify, maybe more of these people would still have access to their Medicaid.
No, if there's a hiccup at all in this entire process, they're going to default to getting you off of Medicaid. That's what the idea is. They're trying to remove names from the rolls, and so yeah, unless all your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, they're gonna lose you in this process. They want to shake out as many people as they can.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is part of a trend that is already going to expand soon and possibly more in the future. Indiana and New Hampshire are slated to implement their Medicaid work requirements next year. And beneficiaries in Indiana will have to work at least 8 months each year, and an 80-hour-a-month requirement will be gradually phased in over an 18-month period. Hopefully the thing that you need this Medicaid for is not something that stops you from working for too long, because you might find yourself with neither the job nor that. New Hampshire is going to require 100 hours a month beginning in January. Enrollees who don't meet the threshold for 1 month will have their coverage suspended.
Okay, so there's two layers to this story. First, they did the giant tax cuts for the rich, so they need to get the money from somewhere. So they're going to get it from you, and so they're going to take it from in this case, the poor, the middle class, etc. So they're going to cut your Medicaid. They're like, oh well, we don't have any money. Yeah, I know, because you gave $2 trillion to the rich in tax cuts. So second of all, it's their ideology that people who require government assistance at any point in their lives are bums. And so, oh yeah, you prove you're not a bum and show us that you work, because they only respect rich people. Donald Trump said it at a rally. He's like, I don't like poor people in my government or in my cabinet. I only want rich people because I need smart people. They can't stand you, and then when you vote for them, they think you're the world's biggest sucker. And where does it hit first? Arkansas. Voted for Trump overwhelmingly, and he's hitting you first. Okay, now the second layer I would argue is even more interesting. So the Chamber of Commerce is not for reducing Medicaid. Now that's interesting. Chamber of Commerce represents big business. They wanted the giant tax cuts. So why don't they want to get it out of the entitlements like some of the other Republicans? Because they don't want to pay for health insurance, they don't want to pay for benefits, etc. So what do? They pay you really low wages, and then they say, go get the rest from the government. So they don't want the government cutting off Medicaid because it takes their costs down. But they also want to make sure that you have to go work for them at low wages. Yeah. So they say, put in a work requirement. So they must work for us, and we unload our costs onto the American taxpayer. Now, I'm not theorizing that. It's a story that we covered a little while earlier. When I saw that the Chamber of Commerce's position was, no, support Medicaid, but make sure people have to work for it, I was like, oh, that's the game that's being played. Because remember, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters for these corrupt politicians is their donors. And the Chamber of Commerce represents the biggest donors in America. And what do they want? They want low wages that they pay out and unload all the costs onto you. So this is exactly how they do it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think this is a bigger part of like the overall problem that we have with Republicans in healthcare, where on a base level, Republicans are saying, if you want healthcare, go get it. It's the free market. You should, if you want it, get a job that pays it. If you want it through Medicaid, work 80 hours, 100 hours a week. But at the same time, they're saying insurance companies should be able to make all the profits they want. It's the free market. And those profits should come directly from people who need that money the most, who need that help the most. So when you look at it from both sides, all they're doing is continually and repeatedly targeting people who are disenfranchised, people who are sick. And that's who they're stealing this money from, like you said, to give it to the richest people in America who don't have enough, apparently.
Yeah.
I just can't help but think it is crashingly ironic that it's happening in these red states in such a big way, of course. And you're going to create a population already struggling that's outright destitute at the end of all of this because the costs of healthcare are so crippling that if you skip ahead in this film to the end, it's really grim. I mean, they're really playing with people's lives in such an ugly way.
So one last quick thing about that. Later in today's show, we have another story about how a lot of the people in the middle of the country got killed by the housing crash more than the coast. The coast recovered and are now doing well, but the middle of the country got killed by it. At some point, this has got to catch up with the Republican Party. I know that people have voted against their own interests for decades now, but when your prices are for your house is underwater and you're paying more for your mortgage than your house is worth, and you've got sky-high insurance rates, and you thought it was going to get better under Obama, and you thought your housing situation was going to get better, you thought your wages were going to get better, and they also went down when you account for inflation, and none of this stuff got fixed. Well, at a bare minimum in 2018, you're not going to be excited to go vote for them. And by 2020, you might realize you've been had, you've been took. They took everything from you and they never gave you anything. It was all a big trick, and the tax cuts went to the rich. They didn't go to you and your life didn't improve. You thought maybe your problems were because of Obama. Well, come to find out, no, it's the powerful that have been robbing you the whole time.
Yeah, and it's true that the rhetoric of the middle class and helping the downtrodden, I mean, the rhetoric that we heard so much of, I mean, that I think they rallied around, that's not going to be able to cut through the next time. So what Cenk's saying is so true. By 2020, I don't know when it's going to happen, but they just won't be able to rally around rhetoric anymore. Their situation is going to become way too dire.
In fact, it has already begun. That is why they are withdrawing their ads about the tax cuts, because they're not only not working, they're counterproductive. People are like, I don't see it in my check. I just don't see it. I know that there was $2 trillion worth of tax cuts, but if it's not in my check, whose check is it in? Exactly. So that bill is already coming due right now. It's only going to get worse and worse for the Republicans. So I conclude with tick, 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 tick. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.